What's going on, everybody? So this year I wanted to try to project holograms up on my rooftop, and I'll show you how I did that in a minute. Now, I did do a previous video on window holograms, but I've learned a lot since I did that original video, so I thought I'd share some of the tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. So I'm going to start off by getting into the window holograms or window projections, and I kind of covered this in my last video. And some people claimed that they were not holograms because you couldn't see into the window. But whatever you want to call it, this was my process for doing that. I created a simple wooden frame out of just by some 1x3 pine boards. And then I'm stretching this material across it, much like you would stretch a canvas. And I'm just using a pneumatic staple gun to staple that material. Now, I had to do this because the window this one is going in is actually framed really nicely with wood, and I didn't want to put any tacks or anything like that. Plus, I really like the idea of stretching this material, but I found out that you don't necessarily have to do that, and I'll show you that in a minute. The material I use to stretch over the frame is a gray rear projection material. It's a special material, and you can order it from Atmosphere FX, but I got this from a place called Carl's Place online, and I'll put a link down below. But this is the finished frame, and I'm just inserting it into the window cavity. And I did have some plantation shutters that I had removed, so I'm just using some wire to attach it to the existing plantation shutter brackets. That way I'm not putting any holes on the wall or anything like that. So let's talk projectors for a minute. The last projector I used in my previous video was a projector I found on eBay. It was a standard definition projector with a really hot light bulb. And now they have these LED projectors, so I figured why not upgrade to HD. So I found this one on Amazon for about 110 bucks, and I thought I'd give it a try. But I was really disappointed in the quality of the picture. Now, picture quality is really predicated on two things. Something called native resolution, which is extremely important, and then lumens. You want high numbers on both. So the first projector I tried was one I found on Amazon that was about $110. The native resolution was 800 by 600, and it had 1200 lumens. And I thought, for 100 bucks, you can't really go wrong. And it got really good reviews, but I was really disappointed with the picture quality. It was extremely grainy, and it just didn't seem that bright. So I sent the projector back and ended up going with this projector. It was about twice as much money as the previous projector, but the native resolution was much better at 1280 by 800, and the amount of lumens was almost 200% better at 3500. It made for a very good picture quality. So this is what the window looks like from the inside, and I'm projecting a video that I just downloaded from Atmosphere FX. But if you notice, you can see the creases in the material, and this is after I had stretched it across that wooden frame. So I was a little concerned that I was going to be able to see those creases from the outside, but it turns out you can't even see them. So this is the view from the outside of the house, and I'll zoom in on the window here in a minute, but you can't really see the creases from the outside, and that's just by nature of how the projection material works, I guess. So probably didn't need to stretch the material after all. The frame came in handy because I didn't have to attach any fasteners or anything to the wood frame inside the window. I didn't want to damage anything. But the other window that I wanted to do was, we have these really large picture windows at the front of the house. So I tried just hanging the material from that window without stretching it, and actually got pretty good results. Now for this front picture window, I'm using that same fabric, but I'm not stretching it over a frame. I'm just attaching it directly to the wall using thumbtacks. And this is just surrounded by drywall, so I wasn't really worried about tiny thumbtack holes, but if you are, you could try to maybe attach it to a pole or just a single piece of wood, and maybe suspend that wood from your curtain rod if you have one. There's many different ways you could actually do this. But again, I was always concerned with those squares, that those creases that happen from how they ship the material. So I just thought, well, gosh, those are going to show from the outside. But after really paying attention to it when I did the first window, I wanted to try doing this one where I'm just hanging the material. Now this material is almost plasticky, so it sags quite a bit, so you actually have to use quite a few fasteners. So I'm using quite a few thumbtacks here just to make sure I at least get that top edge nice and tight. And I'll cut to the projection image in a minute here to show you the results, but you can really see those square edges, so I was a little concerned that it would be more noticeable on such a large window, but I couldn't really tell from the outside. So this is what it looks like from the outside, and this was on Halloween night, and you can tell by the reflection in the window that the sun's still kind of going down, so it's not completely dark. But even without it being completely dark, that projector works really well, and you have no problem seeing those images on the window. And cut to a darker scene here, and even with that white background, it's those squares, those seams in the material were hardly visible. So this is the rig that I set up for the hologram on the roof, and I'm just using a couple of light stands and some paracord with some sandbags to kind of secure everything. And the material I'm using is quite different than the rear projection material. This is a sheer fabric that I purchased from Atmosphere FX. Comes with the grommets pre-installed, so it made it relatively easy. I just wish the material was a little bit bigger as far as surface area goes. To mount the projector, I just installed a piece of U channel. It's made out of aluminum, and then I'm using some 1032 screws to attach that at the bottom. And the 10 is just the screw size, and the 32 is how many threads per inch. So I've mounted that aluminum U-channel to a piece of 2x6 and then attached a piece of 2x4 to the 2x6 just to add a little weight to it so that projector wouldn't tip over, and I also add a brace in the back out of a 2x4 scrap. Use some zip ties to attach the projection material to the paracord, and the paracord is just mounted to 2 light stands that I just happen to have, and then I'm just using some adjustable hitch knots to the top of the light stands and down to some eyelet hooks that I've attached to the house. Now the secret to this rigging is in the knots that you use. So this is an adjustable grip hitch. You could also use something called a taut line hitch, but it's a friction knot that allows you to adjust it, but then when you pull it like this, it's extremely tight and it will not come loose. If you don't know a lot about knots, you can download an app called Knots 3D, and it's I think it was about 99 cents, and it was well worth the money. And before you ask where the sound is on these projections, I've never been a fan of using the sounds, especially on your event night. So during Halloween, I actually use DJ speakers to pipe in a soundtrack that I've already pre-designated. So having that going, and then sound from the projectors and sound from the haunted house inside the garage would have just been way too much. The nice thing about these projectors that I'm using is that you don't need a laptop or an iPad or anything to, pipe the projections in. You can just simply load the video onto a USB thumb drive, plug it into the projector, and it'll play it on a loop. So it made it very convenient. So that's it in a nutshell. Hopefully that inspires you to do some holiday projections in your windows or up on your roof. You can use Halloween, of course, or they have a lot of stuff for Christmas as well. So I may try to dabble with projecting either Santa on the roof or maybe just some snow in the windows for this year.